Welcome. I
Thanks.
guess we can officially get started.
Yeah.
So thank you everyone for joining. As I mentioned before, if you've joined in the chat here, please do say hello. We are going to have this on IGTV and YouTube later as well. So if you're joining us later, feel free to also say hello and ask questions throughout the next half hour. If you have any questions for Laurel, we'll make sure to pass them on. But essentially, these founder chats are created to create a space for different founders in our community who we can kind of help get the word out about what they're doing. And we're just honestly, they're really incredible companies that we're really excited about, and honestly that I just really want to learn a lot more about. So I'm really excited to have you here, Laurel. And Laurel Anne Stark, full name, I'm not mad at you, but that's your name. That's
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Is the founder of, now is it Resurgo or Resurgo?
Melanie, I'm trying to start the debate, the same thing that we have with, like, is it GIF or GIF? I want it to go,
Yeah.
so I'm not gonna comment. You just call it whatever you want.
What I think it is. So
Yeah.
I would call it Resurgo, I think.
Cool.
Ooh, I almost said Resurgo though.
See?
Ooh. And honestly,
Mm.
what's interesting about language, right, is that whatever we start saying over and over again is eventually what will feel right.
Yeah.
So is there a certain one that feels right to you?
I say Resurgio.
Sergio. Okay.
The first time I heard it said, publicly, it was at Pitch of the Beach in Mexico, and
Mhm.
Israel said Resurgio, and it sounded amazing. So that's how I always hear it in my head.
Sergio. Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Mm.
I always like to ask this, honestly, like so many of our names that we come up with as founders of our companies, they have a really
Mhm.
kind of personal reason behind them and aren't always pronounced in the way that other people want to pronounce them, which is really interesting. I appreciate that you're like creating space for people to decide what works for them. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. Okay, and so Resurgo, I'm really excited to learn more. And so everyone, if you haven't been to one of these before, essentially we have a half an hour of kind of a bit of an informal interview, and that's what I was saying. Please do submit your own questions. And we're going to talk through kind of, I'd love to know like the story behind Resurgo.co and what you're doing right now, your crowdfunding campaign. I know you've been up to so much with the State of Female Entrepreneur Mental Health Report, as well as a lot of articles. You've been in the news a lot lately talking about so many important things and unique challenges for women that women face in getting financing, for instance. I saw that recently on Conversations That Matter. So I think that there's a lot we can dig into. So I'm not gonna talk for too much longer here. Oh, my name is Melanie Ewan, by the way. So I'm one of the one of the co-founders of Volition, and constantly forget to introduce myself. So welcome to everyone who's here. And Laurel, I would love to pass this over to you at this time to understand a little bit more around like how do you talk about Resurgo? What is the story behind Resurgo and your place within it?
I love telling the story. Thank you so much for asking.
Of course.
So Resurgo.co started, I've been working on this for about 4 years, but I didn't know that that's what I was working on.
Mm-hmm.
It all kind of started back when I was married with 3 step-kids, and I was trying to like do it all and be it all, which
Yeah.
is so hard. And I
Yeah.
wasn't like doing so well from a mental health perspective. And I read this report that came out of Berkeley University that indicated that entrepreneurs are directly affected by mental illness at a rate basically 3 times the global average, 3 out of 4, as opposed to 1 out of 4. And I was
Yeah.
like, what? Suddenly everything makes sense. My like 2 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
whiteboarding sessions. And so I got like, it really rang my bell. So I actually reached out to Dr. Michael Freeman, and I was like, hey, can I talk to you about this? And
Yeah.
he was like, yeah, sure. So I said, like, what do we need as entrepreneurs? Do we need like sandwiches or hugs or therapy or what? And he's like, get back to me in 4 years when we've completed our next study. Because he's a
Mm.
rigorous, he's a doctor,
Academic. Mm-hmm.
academic. It's got to be
Mm-hmm.
academic. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, well, that's a long time. And then I started doing research. I wonder if there's supports out there, mental health specific for entrepreneurs.
Right.
And I looked for about 20 hours. My assistant looked for 20 hours. We couldn't find anything. And I was like, what? Seriously? We're directly affected at 3 times the global average, but there's nothing. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then that was
Mm-hmm.
about the time that the Me Too campaign started. And then the
Right.
stats started coming out about that. Like 70% of women have been like harassed or assaulted. And I was like, whoa, those numbers are way bigger too. Cause I think I was just living in this little bubble where I thought like it was all lollipops and rainbows or something, but all these numbers were really shocking to me. And then I thought to myself,
Yeah.
like, what if it was like one woman who is going through all of that? What if she was like directly affected by mental illness? What if she had a Me
Mm-hmm.
Too moment? And then the last, like the nail in the coffin, was Maclean's magazine here in Canada came out with the wage gap issue. And again, I thought that this was like taken care of, like feminism is over, we don't need it, we're good. But it was just talking about how the wage gap in Canada is still 72%. And I was like, if all of these things are happening to one woman, she's not going to be having a good time. And we need to support her. So I kind of got a little bit obsessed and I started doing a lot of research. And initially I thought I was going to write a book about this. So I started writing a book, and now the sort of 40% of the book is out in the state of entrepreneur mental health awareness, the state of female entrepreneur mental health. That's it. So we just released that in September. But yeah, basically, I just got sort of obsessed about what would a solution look like. And I've been self-employed for 17 years and worked with thousands of entrepreneurs, both male and female. And, and I started bringing in tools from my own ability to survive through this whole thing. And just started looking like, what do we really need? What are the obstacles in our way? And how do we address that specifically for female entrepreneurs? Because we're unique, special snowflakes. We have a very unique set of obstacles, a very unique set of things that are in our way and that we're trying to do. And we approach business a completely different way. So so here we are. I was like, why not make it an app? So it's in someone's hand and they can just use it right away and they don't have to read a whole big book.
I think this is incredible. I feel like I relate so much to this timeline you're talking about, because I joined the startup ecosystem. I worked in federal government for 10 years, joined the startup ecosystem in 2015. And in the federal government, most of the people I worked with were women in all different levels of authority. And so when I got into the startup ecosystem, I came from that as well as a yoga teacher. So mental health was just like something that was, very important to me and top of mind. And I came into this space and everyone was talking about like the founder, the hustle and grind of the founder, and that you can't have a life and you're expected to work 24/7, and if you don't, you're not going to be successful, and all these things. There was this like real narrative around what an entrepreneur was that I didn't subscribe to, and I couldn't find many people talking about the flip side of the coin. And I was like, these people, like this is going to be a health crisis. Like this can't be right. Like this is going to turn out being this is going to be health is what I was thinking. And then for myself, I personally burned out in 2018. But that's also around the time along your timeline that I started becoming more aware of the distinct barriers that women in business and in tech in particular, because that's where my nonprofit sits, are experiencing. And we started doing our women's pitch events. So same as you, where I was just like, oh, what kind of a bubble have I been living in? And all of a sudden, like I was starting to see things in a different way. So thank you so much for what you do. I think it's very important and timely, because I think I've seen a shift in actually talking about mental health awareness. I'd be curious your thoughts on that, though. Have you seen, what's the reaction been to Resurgo, and have you noticed in the 4 years kind of any changes in terms of the dialogue around mental health and entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I think that there's starting to be a shift. Like we are starting to have less stigma associated with it. The Canadian Mental Health Association finally released a report on how entrepreneurs are affected compared to the general population that came out last year. So we're starting to have these kinds of conversations, and I think the stigma is slowly starting to change with things like Bell Let's Talk Day, these types of things. I find that people tend to fall into two camps. One where they've sort of hit a wall somewhere in their own journey, and they are now aware that you have to kind of take care of your mental health, or they're like, nah, it's not a thing, it's like just stress or whatever, and so I find that
it's a weakness or something. And
I think that it's a lot easier sometimes to just tell ourselves that we're just tired or whatever, because if you admit that something's like wrong, then you're going to have to do something about it. And that takes courage, and that takes vulnerability, and that takes a tremendous amount of work. And so, denial is a powerful tool, and it's one of our coping mechanisms for a reason. So
absolutely, it's
definitely shifted. I think there's tons of work to do. And actually, we stopped talking about Resurgo as a primarily mental health app when we were doing our beta research, because we found that people just they're not as interested in that as they are in a business performance tool or a tool that will help them succeed. So the foundation is going to help you with your mental health and your success, but we don't talk about that anymore because no one wants to hear it, and that's fine. I always liken it to like if you have a dog and you have to feed it medicine, you just put the pill inside the cheese or the peanut butter, and you're like, it's just cheese, dude. It's good. Good. It's how. So that's kind of what we're trying to do. But I mean, it's not a secret because I'm telling you about it right now. But you know,
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, and you do talk fairly openly about this, and it's in your pitch, and I really appreciate that as well.
Yeah.
So in terms of the actual application itself, where are you at? So you said you've been working on this in different ways for 4 years. So where is Researcho at? What does it look and feel like?
Okay, well, where we're at is we are a work in progress. So currently we are crowdfunding, and we are crowdfunding in order to be able to get Resurgo in the hands of the women that need it sooner than later. We've been bootstrapped up to this point, and I just kind of looked at the timeline and I was like, okay, so if I just keep self-funding, we're not going to have this out into the marketplace for like another 5 years, because like I'm working my, my day consulting gig, etc. So it's just going to be it's going to take a long time. So I started crowdfunding because I wanted to accelerate that process. Right. So it looks like we're going to have some of the features available at the end of the year, the ones that are like the easiest to get done and out, and then the sort of really basic, quick and dirty, like ugly version is going to be done in spring.
Fantastic.
So yeah, we do need to do a lot of design development work because we're dealing with such sensitive information. We need to be compliant with healthcare regulations and privacy regulations and all that jazz. And so the government's, and all their red tape is in there. So we've got to jump through those hoops. So yeah, currently we have our 7 core features identified and what they're going to do and how they're going to work. Everybody who backs our crowdfunding campaign, though, is going to have a say in the design and development, because what I find is that my assumption as to what people want or what's going to be helpful is like 9 times out of 10 not correct. So we want to validate and verify. Yeah, so the design and development process, it's basically going to start as soon as the crowdfunding campaign's finished and go all the way to spring, and then we'll be able to release something that's resembling what the end product would look like eventually.
Okay, and then did I see that the crowdfunding campaign ends in 14 days?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Oh, it's so exciting. What has that been like? What are some lessons learned that you've compiled? It's such a tough, so tough, crowdfunding.
It is so tough, and I don't know. So basically, I feel like so I'm an 80s kid. I grew up in the 80s, and there was like this commercial about a guy, and he was like I think it was like the hair club for men, and he's like, I'm not just the president, but I'm a customer too. And he was like selling hair plugs or something. But I feel like that. I'm just like, I need this app right now because I am stressed. And like, so it's been an absolute roller coaster. Like I've had all the things that come up. I'm like the poster child for self-employed women. Like, I experience the same obstacles that, all the research shows, and I'm like living it in real time right now. Like I'm talking to like lots of different places for funding and things. And it's just, I'm getting the runaround, or they're not getting back to me. And I'm just like, see, women don't get funding. I'm like applying for increases to, credit and things like that. And, I'm one of the 85% of women that's running their business off their credit card and like their, savings and things like that. With COVID and everything, like it's been tough. So I've just been like really trying to be honest about how I'm doing and like really building up that support network around me. But there's been moments where I'm just like, why did I do this? Why did I do this in public? Like, oh, I'm such an idiot. Or like, it's all gonna fail and all this other stuff. And I wish I could just like take it all back, but it's like, it's right out there. So I think it's like all the feelings at once is the best way to describe it.
No, I know. I did a crowdfunding campaign in 2017, and I had no idea how intense it was going to be, and how much work goes into it. And I don't know if I feel like people don't tell you that or something. Like it's just like, an incredible community to be a part of, and it's just like it's a full-time job just to manage a crowdfunding campaign. I mean, there's actual jobs that is the job to manage crowdfunding campaigns. Incredible.
Yeah, I'm learning now that I should have had like 5 more people like on the team full time. It's been a tremendous amount of work, but also super rewarding. Like I get all teary. I'm just like, I have no idea who that person is, and they just backed my campaign. It's really nice.
Yes,
it's really nice to just feel that momentum behind me and to like confirm that, what everybody's saying. Because I'm like, talk is cheap, right? But people are like, this is the greatest thing ever, and it's about time this came out, and can't wait to use it. But to actually have people back it that I've never even heard of before there's no feeling like it, I don't think.
No, it's incredible. Amazing. Well, congratulations. I mean, thanks. Even like getting to this point and still being here today and talking to us, and you look pulled together. A little bit blurry. I think that's our internet connection, but aside from that,
no, I'm
maybe that's a representation of how you feel. I don't know. So in
Thank
terms
you.
of something, it sounds like you have an incredible wealth of knowledge being self-employed and working with different entrepreneurs, and obviously you've done research in this space. So I'm curious about, like, aside from talking to your customers and learning what they want, what are some other lessons learned or tips that you would have for kind of first-time founders, people who are a little bit newer to the game, and particularly during this year of 2020 and all the things?
That's such a great question. So I think that like one thing that I learned the hard way that I would love to sort of save people, anybody from experiencing is like just to know that this is gonna take everything you've got, like to start and run your own gig, especially if you're a woman, and that
Mm,
it like it's in your best interest to start to set up like some sort of architecture to support yourself, whether
right.
that's like a community of other founders that you can talk to, whether it's a
Hmm.
therapist.
Hmm.
Because what I
Hmm.
hear over and over, and I've experienced it myself, is that like partners and friends, they just don't get it. And like also, do you really want to talk to them about your business for 3 hours? Like that's mean. So making sure that you have like you know that it's going to impact your mental health in a really intense way, and to have
Hmm.
like mitigating strategies for that. And also to just, don't do everything yourself. Try to like don't reinvent the wheel. There's
Hmm.
people who've done something similar, and like you can basically be inspired by them. But yeah, it's a ton of work, and it can take you out. It can give you burnout. We have like I'm still blown away that Kate Spade killed herself. I'm just like, with those cute bags, like what do you mean? Like everything. So
I know.
entrepreneurs like legitimately, don't mean to be a fearmonger here, but like entrepreneurs legitimately experience mental health concerns at a rate 3 times the global average.
Yeah.
And like, and some of them kill themselves. So like what you're trying to do is super hard, and like don't like just undermine that. Be very, very
Yeah.
mindful, take really good care of yourself because it's hard.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And knowing that you have people you can talk to. That's something that I was just talking about at our last pitch event, saying every time that I talk about burnout, I have people reach out and say, "Thank you
Hmm.
for talking about this.
Yeah.
I'm going through this, or I've gone through this, and I didn't feel like I could talk about it publicly."
Yeah.
And people say it's so courageous to talk about it publicly. But I think, like what you were saying, when you've gone through it, especially when you work with entrepreneurs as well, and you see others going through it,
Yeah.
it it doesn't feel courageous, it feels required. It's something
Agreed.
that we need to talk about more. And so people that don't feel they can talk about it know that they have people they can connect with. And I love, like,
Oh my God.
having
Yes.
that team around you. I have a therapist and I have a community, and I really appreciate both for different reasons. And I think it's very important to talk about and normalize these things.
Yeah. And I would add a couple things to that, like to just know that the culture that prioritizes performance, business performance over your own wellness is actually like super toxic. And that like hustle and grind culture that you've been talking about, um, it's not okay. It's not okay. And
Yeah.
you don't necessarily have to do that. And like from the place of like being super real about like, your experiences, and thank you for talking about burnout. It's so important. And like I burnt out like 2 or 3 times. I think I'm on my third right now actually, which is a little
Mm,
scary, but
scary. Yeah.
yeah. So, anyways, I'm taking the vitamin D and whatever. But like,
Yeah.
taking good care of myself. But also like
Yeah.
when I started my business, I grew up. Well, I grew up in business. I started when I was like a kid at 23, and so
Mm,
where I grew up and started my business, it was very much a work hard, play hard culture, and I didn't
right.
really realize or notice, but like I kind of just got to the place that I was either working or drinking. Like that was it. And
Right.
then I hit my 30s
Hmm.
and I was like, uh-oh, like this is not good. So,
Hmm.
that's a
Hmm.
super common piece of the culture as well. And like performance drugs and this type of and like substances are like, they can be dangerous. So just like heads up
Yeah.
on that. Like it didn't work out for me and alcohol, I had to break up and that's fine.
Yeah.
But it's just so normalized, especially like rosé all day and like mommy's wine juice or whatever it is. Just,
Mm,
that
hmm.
stuff can be dangerous also. So I wanted to speak to that as well. And like also I know tons of people after the fact that went through the 2008 recession that are now talking about how they had to go bankrupt. And like that happens
Right.
too. And like it totally sucks, but I mean, you do what you got to do, right? So
Hmm.
it's a legal
Hmm. Hmm.
option. But yeah, having been
Hmm.
through all
Hmm.
those things, right? So yeah, I think don't compare your insides to other people's outsides is the advice I always
Yeah.
give and try to remind myself as well. We are not our social
Yeah.
media feed, right?
There's a whole bunch of not glamorous behind behind the scenes, a
Yeah.
whole
There's a
bunch of
lot of
it.
bathroom
Yeah.
crying. A lot of bathroom
Yeah.
crying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. And thank you so much for sharing all of everything you've been through as well. I think it's really
Yeah.
important. Um,
Yeah.
and oh, so back to Resurgio. I'm just like popping all over the place. My mind, I'm just
Yeah. Good.
so excited by everything. Is generally a question we often hear is, what is your vision for Resurgio? So I know you've talked about until like next spring that you're going to have the gritty version of it out in spring,
Yeah.
but what is your longer term vision for Resurgio? Resurgio.co, Resurgio?
Yeah.
Your preference?
Resurgio.co. We're trying to keep the .co in there so people know where
Dot
to
co.
find us.
Okay, perfect.
Also because there's a .com, and anyway. Uh, so my long-term
Branding.
vision is to get this in the hands of 1 million self-employed women by 2030. So our
Mm,
numbers are
right.
growing at like record rates. So that's the first thing. And then on my way, by about 2025, I want to be able to create a version for men, or like people who
Right.
identify. And I want to be clear, I don't say this enough. So I just want to be clear that it's people who identify as women, people who identify as men. But yeah, I want to create a version specifically for men because, they have their own mental health struggles, they have their own business struggles,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a very
Mm-hmm.
specific experience as well. And I think that if we had some tools supporting entrepreneur mental health that are specific to our experiences, that everyone will benefit. So that's my grand vision. And then,
Okay.
later on, I want to kind of look at like maybe just a version for like employees, even though I think that there's not going to be that many by then. I think it's all going to be gig economy, but we'll see.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
I guess we'll fun. So that's your crystal ball prediction. All
Yeah.
right, you heard it here first. Let's see what
You
happens.
totally did. Yeah.
So with those grand visions in mind, what can we as your community do to support you? In other words, what is your ask here today?
My ask is that you back our crowdfunding campaign. So
Yeah.
it's only going on
Smart.
for another 14 days.
Yeah.
And the perks are all related to access to the app or any sort of future plans for the app. So we have a couple pretty sweet, we tried to make it as like compelling as possible. We have some pretty
Mm-hmm.
sweet perks. The first is 60% off an entire year of support. That gets you access to all the features for up to 60% off. So that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Official partnership for $500, which is pretty good as well. And also there's gifts that you can give, etc. So that's the main thing. I had no idea how much it was going to cost to even get to the point that we're at. So yeah, every single penny is going to go towards design and development of resurgio.co, and then get you access to it at 60% off. The other part is every backer gets say in the design and development. And because
Love
we are
that.
the first web app designed to help self-employed women succeed, you're going to be helping to make history. So I think it's pretty good for perks.
There you go. That's amazing. So if you haven't heard it yet, go to resurgio.co. So that's resurgo.co, and you can learn more about the crowdfunding campaign, about what Laurel's doing, and it's really very exciting to be a part of.
Thank you, Molly.
So, of course. So I know we only have a few minutes left, and for anyone who has any questions, please do submit them. If you've just joined us, thank you for everyone who's waving. It's lovely to see you. And if you've just joined us, this is Laurel Anne Stark, who's the founder of Resurgio.co. And you can always watch back. This will be on IGTV and YouTube later. You can watch back and hear more about the origin story and about crowdfunding campaign, lessons learned, working with entrepreneurs, mental health, all the things that we've covered. So something I want to touch on very quickly, because I know we don't have a lot of time, but I think it's really important that you did this report, the State of Female Entrepreneur Mental Health in 2020. I was curious if, I know if you go to resurgio.co, you can download the report, but are there any key lessons learned that you wanted to share with our audience as kind of like a key takeaway for us here today?
Yeah, sure. So it is a 50-page report, so definitely download it if you want to know more. But the upshot of it is essentially that like when I started out as a self-employed person, I thought that if I just worked hard enough that I could get whatever I wanted. I thought that we lived in a meritocracy that was based on your merit, like how hard you worked and the value you provided in the economy. I had no idea the level of bias that still exists. So when I'm working with female entrepreneurs, it's really important for me to communicate to them and for them to hear that we do not work and live and play on a level playing field. There is significant bias that still exists that impedes us in ways that we tend to internalize and self-blame. So my aim with this report is to basically let people know that like it's not fair out there. There's systemic bias working against you. And when people say, often we think that we should be doing things differently or better. And I think that we're doing things amazingly well. If you look at the actual data, female entrepreneurs do way more with way less. So we outperform our male counterparts by a wide margin. So we're actually doing pretty great. And so I wanted to reduce the shame that a lot of female entrepreneurs experience around, how well they're doing. We do way more work, we get paid way less, we have a lot more obstacles, up to and including like 70% of women have been assaulted. Like, that's crazy. So if people think that that's not going to impact your ability to do well in your business, like, I say get your head checked.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
That's my soapbox topic. Thank you for asking.
Great. Yes. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah. So go check out researcher.co. And if you go to researcher.co/the state of female entrepreneur media in health, I think, or mental health media, mental health 2020.
You can do researcher.co/research. I realized that was awfully long. So
there you go.
Yeah.
Okay. So fantastic. And I appreciate it. I'm a researcher as well, community-based researcher. And I've talked to a lot of these women and heard their stories, and also was unaware of how bad it still was. And not just in Canada, it is bad in Canada. So we met Laurel at Pitch Canada. And where in Canada are you located again?
Victoria,
BC. Okay, close to my hometown, Vancouver. But here, I moved here to Europe in 2018. I've been here since. And part of the reason I came here was to learn what other countries were doing and if they were doing any better than we are. And it turns out they are not. So this is a global challenge that women in entrepreneurship, women in tech, women in a lot of different industries are facing. And it's really important to be aware of. And be aware of so many different pieces, even what you're talking about, the language to use, like inclusive language to use around gender identity, these kinds of things. There's so much to learn always. And I think it's okay for us to be continually learning and to not know what we're doing and to be changing how we talk about things and changing how we think about things and to realize we were wrong about some things as well. I think that's all good stuff that we should also be normalizing, and things like your report and what you're doing are helping with that. So if people are like, oh, this is amazing, I want to meet Laurel, what is the best way for them to connect with you directly?
Me directly? Oh, I'm all over the internet all the time. So you can find me. I'm on like every channel. I spend more time on Instagram than anywhere else. My profile is pretty low key. I'm the girl hula hooping. So Laurel Anne Stark is my handle, and I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. Professionally, connect with me on LinkedIn. If you just want to like look at memes, Instagram's the place.
Fantastic. And then researcho.co is on Instagram, obviously, and on other platforms as well, I assume?
Everywhere.
Okay, perfect. All right. So before we close off, is there anything that we haven't touched on today that you wanted to speak about?
I just wanted to say that in terms of mental health and stuff like that, right now, everybody's having a pretty rough time. And I would say just check on your people, ask for help. Don't feel ashamed. It's rough going right now, and you're certainly not alone, and we'll get through it all together.
Amazing. Thank you. All right. So the last question I always ask is, what is one thing that brings you joy right now?
I'm so torn between hula hooping and painting with my stepkid. One of the two.
You can break the rules and say both.
We do Bob Ross paintings on the YouTube videos, and we make bad art, and it's just really a blast.
That's so fun. Oh my goodness. And hula hooping. Yes. And hula hooping is very difficult. I remembered being a child and it being easy, and that is no longer the case. Apparently, my body no longer knows how to hoop. So that was an interesting realization over the past year. So I recommend, if you haven't hula hooped as an adult, to give it a go.
Exactly.
It is humbling and amazing, and very good for you, I understand, as well.
It's really fun. Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks
so
All
right.
much, Melanie.
Thank you
really
so
appreciate
much.
Your time.
No, I do. I appreciate you coming on so much as well, and really excited to have you here. For those who are familiar, we generally do these once a week. We're going to be winding down for the rest of the year just because our schedules are getting really crazy busy, but then we'll be back. We're going to have one on November 10th with Fabiana Clement of Wide Data, really incredible company from here, or from, I was going to say here in Spain. I'm no longer in Spain. I'm in Ireland, but from where I was in Spain. We should have a couple more this year, so just kind of stay tuned on our social channels. We are also on all the channels. And otherwise, thank you everyone for coming out. As I mentioned, this will be on IGTV and YouTube. Please share it out. Please check out researcho.co and like and follow and all the things. And again, thank you all so much for being here today. I will see you next time.